Hello my dear health seekers, Inga from Health Origins here, and today I'm gonna be showing you hopefully a quite useful sourdough starter recipe. So you can make either rye sourdough starter that I'm gonna be making, or you could also use the same exact recipe and make wheat sourdough starter. And I would recommend using whole grain flour for this because obviously anything I bake here on this channel I always advise do a whole grain version. So let's begin. So this is a fairly simple recipe, how to make your own sourdough starter at home, but it takes a little bit of time. So it takes maybe 4 to 6, maybe 7 days, but actually I think you should have a starter ready to use for about, in about 4 or 5 days. So what you're gonna need, equal amount of flour. So here I'm using a wholemeal rye flour. So this is Dove's Farm that I buy from Sainsbury's, but wherever you can get a hold of wholemeal rye flour, that's great. So I'm using 1/3 of a cup, which is 80 milliliters. Some other sourdough starter recipes I've seen that they're using about 70 grams, but this seems to be kind of good amount for me, not too much, not too little, to get this going. So basically you want 1/3 of a cup of the rye flour, so I'm gonna just add that here. So you want 1/3 of a cup of rye flour, so I'm adding it to a clean glass bowl. So you could use either glass or stainless steel or even plastic, something non-reactive, but I think glass is best for this. Then also I'm gonna add 6 raisins. So this is an optional ingredient, you don't have to add them, but it speeds up the process of the starter if you add some raisins. So I've got some raisins that have some pips in, so we're not using them for cooking or eating anyway, so might as well just use them for making a starter. So I'm adding 6. So remember how many raisins you've added, because you're going to need to fish them out in about 3 days time. So make sure you remember how many there were, and the same amount of water. So this is such a simple recipe. 1/3 of a cup of flour and 1/3 of a cup of water. That's basically it, and raisins obviously are optional. So I'm gonna just add the same amount of water and just gonna mix it up. So this is what it's called, 100% hydration starter or ratio, where it's the same amount of water as it is flour. To be more precise, you could always weigh your flour to make sure it's 80 grams, but I just go with the amounts. It's pretty close enough, I think. So there you go. So this is like a paste, so make sure you mix it in so there's no clumps. So that's mixed in now, and what we're gonna want to do is to cover it with clean muslin cloth, or you could also use a kitchen towel, a clean kitchen towel, to cover it. And then you have either a string, or I've got like a rubber band to just keep that in place to ward off any critters, any flies or anything like that. You don't want anything to get into your starter in sourdough starter. So there you go. So So this is my starter, and now I'm gonna keep this on my counter in the kitchen or in my utility room, wherever it's warmer. You want to keep it at room temperature, and every day I'm going to be showing you, but every day basically I'm going to discard, well, I'm not going to discard, I'm just going to take away the a bit of a starter and leave only a third of a cup of it. So obviously this is going to grow more, so you know, every day we're going to just keep a third of a cup of the existing starter and add the same amount of new flour and new water every day and mix it in. So that's kind of the process. And the starter you discard, just put it in a separate jar, and once you have, you know, enough over a few days, then you can make some savory or sweet pancakes. Put it in the frying pan, put a few spring onions on you know, on each pancake, maybe some spices that you like, maybe a bit of bouillon stock powder, or you know, some smoked paprika, some, you know, maybe salt, some herbs that you like, and let it kind of almost dry out, where you see it's kind of almost dried out, you know, on the top. Then you flip them over to finish baking, and that's a savory pancake that you can have with you know, barbecue sauce, ketchup, or whatever other sauce you like. So this is quite a good way of using up discarded starter. And also I'll make a recipe video of how you can make a sourdough cracker, you know. So from rye sourdough discards, you can make actually yummy rye sourdough cracker. So that's the recipe. Once I make it, I'll link above and in the description below as well, so watch out for that. So we'll check tomorrow to see what's going on. So this is second day with our rye sourdough starter, so let's have a look. So I'll uncover it and let's have a look. So what we're looking for, and we're probably not going to see it yet because it's been just one day, we're looking for some bubbles, some signs of kind of bubbles and activity. You can look at the bottom a bit, but there's nothing happening as of yet, which is normal because, like I say, it's just the first day. So what we want to do, we want to keep a third of a cup of this starter, you know, for feeding with the new flour, and the rest we're gonna put it in a discard jar. So I've got a clean jar here where I'm gonna be putting some of that sourdough discard and keeping it in the fridge, and later on I'll be making some pancakes with it, or also crackers you could do as well. So I'm just gonna, and I'll keep the raisins for now as well with my starter. I'm just gonna make sure I've got a third of a cup here. So there we have it. So I've got a third of a cup, and the rest goes into this jar. So there's not a lot of starter to really work with, but just enough to do what we need. So yeah, so I'm gonna pour. If you're not so pedantic, if you're not worried about, you know, kind of exact measurements and stuff, I normally don't, but for this video I wanted to do it properly. But normally I just put some more flour and water into the whole existing starter without measuring exact third of a cup or anything like that. You know, you just end up with a bit more of that sourdough starter really. And you might need to feed it a little bit more flour as well, because it basically has to be kind of the same amount of flour as you have starter. That's why, you know, that's why it's kind of recommended to discard some, so you don't need to put too much flour every day. So now I'm gonna just I'll just wash off this a little bit with the water first. So 1/3 of a cup of water goes in, and then 1/3 of a cup of flour again. But too much, it doesn't need to be like, you know, to the ground, to like a grain, but approximately. So just adding all that flour in and mixing it. So there we go. This is now ready to be put in room temperature again for another day until the next feed tomorrow evening. This is day 4 of the Rye Sourdough starter, so let's have a look. So today it's not as bubbly as yesterday. You see, yesterday the weather was much warmer than today. So as you can see, there are, you know, a couple of little bubbles, but not as much as it was yesterday. So again, I'm gonna continue the same. I'm gonna put 1/3 of a cup of this starter to the side, and the rest I'm gonna put in my discard jar. And as I put it into this jar, you can see there's little tiny bubbles everywhere. So it is kind of starting to be alive, starting to bubble up. I think probably a day or two and this will be ready. You're kind of looking for bigger bubbles forming throughout the whole starter. So I'm just gonna put the discard into my jar. This is quite a sloppy job, as you can see. Or maybe I'm just quite sloppy. So anyway, so I'm gonna just add my 1/3 of a cup of the existing starter. And feed it with some more fresh flour and water as before. Now I fed my starter again, and I'm gonna put this on the muslin cloth again and leave it for another day. Day 6 of Rye Sourdough starter, so let's have a look. Yes, if you have a look at this, it's definitely starting some bubbling action going on. You can see there's bigger bubbles, there's plenty of small bubbles, and if you look kind of through there, you might not be able to see, but there's little bubbles all through this starter. So one way to check whether the starter is active is to drop a bit of it into water, and if it floats at the top, it means there's plenty of bubbles, it's active, it's good active starter. If it sinks to the bottom, it means it's kind of not active enough. So that's when you want to check maybe if your starter has been in the fridge for a while and you're not sure how active it is and you need to activate it first. So that's what you would do. You would do the drop test. So let me try this. Yes, as you can see, it's alive and active, so it's really, it's a good sign. If it goes to the top like this, then it means you've got an active starter. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get this ready to take to the fridge. I'm gonna use some for baking bread. So my next video will be making no knead rye sourdough bread, and I'll link to that recipe video in the card above and in the description below once I make it for you. But for now, I'm just gonna add a 1/3 of a cup of the starter into a clean jar, feed it as normal, and instead of leaving in just in room temperature like before, I'm gonna put a lid on it and actually put it in the fridge. This way you don't need to feed your starter every day. You can do it every 3 days. I have left it even up to 5 days before I fed it. But yeah, at least, you know, 4 or 5 days, you know, at least minimum you need to feed it. But you know, it saves you not having to feed it every single day. So I'm gonna just add 1/3 cup, and it's a little bit of a constant game, you know. If you've got an active starter, you need to keep on top of it, or you know, like I said, keep it in the fridge, and that gives you a little, you know, couple of more days. If you're away on holiday for a week or two, then what you could do, you could dehydrate your starter. I know people done that. Dehydrate your starter, powder it in a powder, and keep it in a jar. And once you want to restart it again, it's like an insurance policy. If yours obviously dies in the fridge, because obviously it's going to be a week or two if you're away and you can't feed your starter, so then you've got a backup starter in powder version where you can rehydrate it, and you know, it'll start up quicker than you creating a new starter for yourself. So 1/3 cup I'm gonna add in here. And it helps if it's warmer in your house, because it's been fairly warm the last few days, so you know, this has worked really well. But if it's colder in your kitchen, maybe try putting it next to the stove or the oven somewhere, or near radiator, maybe on a windowsill somewhere. Obviously not straight onto radiator because it'll be too hot, but somewhere maybe near where, you know, if it's like winter time, you've got radiators on, then somewhere near heating, that it's, you know, it's got that warmth to start working quicker. So yeah, so I'm gonna just feed this as normal, with 1/3 cup of more flour and 1/3 cup of more water. So this is now ready. I'm gonna add a lid to this, and this is ready to go to the fridge now, and I'll be feeding it every 3-4 days to keep it alive in between bakings. And to reactivate again, you kind of want to take it out from your fridge before you need to bake and do this quick feeding. So take out 1/3 cup of starter from here, feed it with new flour and new water at least for a few hours, and that should kind of reactivate and start bubbling again. You might need to do it a night before, so just if you want to bake something, you know, say tonight, take it out of the fridge, do the feeding overnight, and then in the morning your starter in the bowl will be ready to use for bread baking. So this is it. I hope you enjoyed this sourdough starter making tutorial and video. Give me a thumbs up if you did, if it was helpful. If you're new here, welcome to my channel, and subscribe for more videos and tips and recipes just like this on Wednesdays and Saturdays. I also do weight loss tips, and remember guys, food is fuel, so be mindful of what you put in the body. Until next time.